Hello, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be doing a review, or maybe like mini review breakdown of the Speak No Evil, James McAvoy's latest little film, which I thoroughly enjoyed. Predictable in parts, but good. But okay, let's get into this review. So the beginning part starts when they're on holiday, and I think it's like Italy or something, and the family, which are Scoot McNairy, what a fun name to say, Scoot McNairy, who plays Ben Dalton, Mackenzie Davis, who plays Louise Dalton, and Alex West Leffler, who plays Agnes Dalton. They're the family and they're on holiday, and they bump into the other family, which is James McAvoy's Paddy, Aisling Frankuski, which I'm sorry I butchered, but I have no clue how to pronounce that name, but she plays Kira, and then the last one of that family is Dan Hugh, who plays Ant. So, they're on holiday, and here there's themes of idealization and jealousy from the dad, Scoot McNairy, who thinks that he's lesser than James McAvoy's Paddy, which I don't want to say anything about. And whilst on holiday here, like, Paddy kind of shines as this charismatic, like, smooth criminal, because there's, like, a toilet paper debate. Now, stay with me on this. He kind of says, calls over this other family who they didn't really want sitting and socializing with them, and he's like, we're just having a debate around this table, very sophisticated adult debate about toilet paper. Do you fold it or do you scrunch it? And this kind of gets Louise and Ben to kind of open up to him, and they kind of start liking him because it's charismatic and stupid, his humor, and it shows just how charming Paddy can be when he wants to be, which I thought was great, and James McAvoy really pulls it off. Here too, we see how the daughter on holiday can't be without a toy. Like, she loses it, and then they're like, oh, we have to go all the way back to the hotel to find your toy bunny. Now, in this script, written by director and writer James Watkins. Anyway, that's who it's written by and directed by. And they do, I think they deliberately drop breadcrumbs within this movie, and you can pick them up quite quickly and easily, I found anyway. So when this Agnes left a bunny toy on holiday, I was like, that's definitely going to be coming up again. And it does, many times. But back home, when they're no longer on holiday, and they're back to their ordinary life in London. And I say ordinary life because you're in London. But anyway, back to their ordinary life. The father, Ben, and the mother, Louise, are quite clearly unhappy. And it's very, like, still and dark. Like, the lighting's dark, the cinematography's dark. It's quite shot slow. It is slow scenes, slow dialogue, very serious compared to the bright, happy family that we saw in Italy. Not on about the Daltons. I'm on about Paddy and Akira and Ant. And I kind of that's the contrast, right? You see their family and how they live it up in Italy compared to like how the Daltons lived it up in Italy and then go back home to their still quiet life. And Ben has this, again I say, like, Ben has this fixation on Paddy and how much better he is than them. But also here, Paddy gave him an invitation to come to his house. So they go for a nice long weekend. There's also signs from the get-go that this place is not correct and this is weird. There's dirty bed sheets, and Agnes is made to sleep in a sleeping bag on the floor of Ant's room, who screams bloody murder at night time and scares the crap out of Agnes and makes her sleep down with her parents in their dirty bed. Whilst on a long weekend, Paddy kind of really builds a facade of his life. In one scene, Paddy says that, yeah, we're going to go to a really exclusive restaurant that's down by the seaside, like by the seashore. Seashore. Yeah. And then it kind of builds this like, oh, they're rich and they've got good, they're well connected, right? Exclusivity, which again, it kind of paints into this amazing life that Paddy has where Ben's like, yeah, I don't have any of this. Here, there's another funny scene that kind of, funny but awkward scene that kind of stands out. And it's when the scene around the dinner party turns sexual. Now, previously, they were talking about the environment and having differing sides. It was Louise versus Paddy, which is the theme of this movie. Constantly Louise and Paddy are at each other's like opposite ends, and they have like soft arguments, which Paddy likes to call a debate, but I think Louise is like, she's pissed. But here it turns a little sexual, this scene, and it's a really funny, awkward, intense kind of comedic moment, and I think that the writers do a great job in capturing all those emotions. Because myself, my friend, and the teenagers sitting behind me in the cinema, we all couldn't help but laugh awkwardly when Kira pretends to give Paddy some oral fun downstairs in front of Louise and Ben, who had just admitted they don't have sex, but they do like once every month, if Ben's lucky. So that was kind of funny, and again here it's like a power play. Paddy is like, oh, now I know that you guys don't have sex much. Well, I'm gonna shove my sex life right in your face, literally. But of course they're just joking, and they're like, haha, no, we're just joking. We didn't really do that, but I think they did. Also during this dinner party, Paddy comes off as very charming and very charismatic, but clearly cracked. He mentions his parents and references them, calling them the C word, and he goes on to make comments about them and about the trauma that he experienced and how trauma passes down from trauma because his parents had trauma from the war, I think he references at one point. But he blames the parents, and I thought that Sigmund Freud would definitely be agreeing with him. Also, I thought it was really interesting, and I kind of agree here with Paddy, that Paddy makes some commentary on social media and how it has made everyone so dishonest and impatient, which I'm going to have to agree with. I think the worst parts of human behavior, I feel, come out online, specifically on social media, and I think people kind of think they can do and say whatever online because they're removed from the situation. People wouldn't say half as much they say online if they were standing face to face with people, and I think this is kind of Paddy's point. But the kids here in the movie, I think, are quite smart. So Ant, I think, is quite smart because whilst trying to break free of his parents and his captors, he takes Agnes down to the cellar by throwing a football or a rugby ball and throwing it deliberately far enough to go by the farm barnyard that has the cellar that he can show Agnes. And here is where the film reveals all the previous families who have come across this couple and been killed. Now, I thought this was a great twist. I knew something was off with them. Obviously, the trailers, and it's, a horror thriller. So I knew that Paddy was off, and I knew he was going to try and kill and attack the Daltons, but I did not see it coming that they're serial killers and they've killed many families before. Now that one was a good twist, but here the kids are smarter than the adults, which I found interesting. But I do think sometimes the script's predictable and it leaves us breadcrumbs, as I've mentioned before, and I think if you pick them up, you can figure out the film for yourself quite quickly, which I did on several occasions. For example, when Agnes and Kira are picking berries, and Kira goes, "Oh, careful not to pick them too quickly because you're going to prick your finger on the thorns." And then later, Agnes becomes the smart child when she deliberately goes and picks a thorn from those berries and pricks her finger and makes her legs bleed, so that she can fake a first period. So I think the kids actually are quite smart in this film. Also, in this barn scene in the cellar, it was really harrowing to see Ant kind of explain by pointing at the pictures of his family and then his tongue that this is him, kind of when he explains to Agnes he's been kidnapped and these aren't his parents. Of course, Ant can't speak because Kira and Paddy, I think Paddy had cut off his tongue, and he's explaining this to Agnes. But to explain this to Agnes, he does a movement of, a scissors going across his tongue as the music swells, and it creates this really harrowing, suspenseful, very horrid scene. And with movies and films, normally it's show, don't tell, but I think that the writers have done a great job here. Props to James Watkins, honestly, here, because it is great thriller genre work to force the audience into imagining his tongue being cut off by Paddy, where you could just show it and we can still be horrified. Here, I think it is genius that I'm even more horrified than if I was to actually watch the act itself, because I'm forced into imagining it as the music swelling and he's slowly axing away his tongue. Oh, it was just horrible, but it was so well done. Another really weird scene that we could talk about here is when the kids are dancing for their parents. They're doing a Howdy Cotton Eye Joe, I think it is, song, and they're just doing the little cowboy dances. But here we see how truly cracked and damaged Paddy is as a person, because he Ant keeps dancing up and messing up the dance because he's not as quick as Agnes, and it's because he's dancing out of terror, where Agnes is trying to dance casually before she finds out that they're serial killers. So here Louise and Paddy once again go at each other, and Louise is like, well, stop shouting at Ant, he's just a kid, they're just doing a dance for us, just let it be. And Paddy goes on about his parents again and how he got smacked around if things weren't perfect. So Ant needs to be perfect and he needs to be performing as good as Agnes because he's letting their family down and he's making them look stupid. And I think he goes to hit Ant at one point as well. But I think the scene here captured so much power and abuse and abusive relationships, especially with an age gap. I think it created it here really well. I think it's here as well that Louise is now like, yep, we gotta go. This is not the place for us. But Paddy manages to manipulate them back into staying. Also, in this scene, Kira's age doesn't add up. Now, I said I'll get on to Kira, and I'm not going to fully get onto it just yet because I want some surprises in this review. I want you to be surprised with me. But Kira's age does not add up as to when she first met Paddy. Now, that was really interesting. Again, when I say the script in parts is predictable, and if you pick up on the breadcrumbs, you can figure the movie out before they explain it to you. So I kind of put two and two together in that moment, as did my friend. And in the scene, the last big bit of news from this particular scene was that Louise has cheated on Ben. Not physically, it was just pictures of another guy's downstairs area on her phone, but for Ben that was enough. It was the intent of cheating from Louise that's caused a rift between the two. But you might be asking yourself, why did this couple, Louise and Ben Dalton, want to stay on this farm? Well, they do try and leave several times, especially after they find Agnes sleeping with Kira and Paddy in the bed at night time. But why is it that they can't leave and they have to stay? Well, the damn bunny! See, told you it comes back. Because when they first do leave, Agnes has forgotten her bunny. It's not in the car, and they do stop and they look in the boot, and they're like, oh damn, the bunny's not here because she's left it. But it's become a coping mechanism for Agnes, I think, because she's picked up on the fact her parents are fighting, and I think the bunny is that friend or like a coping mechanism for her, which I thought was quite sweet, which is why she can't leave it behind. I think we've all had that one toy in our childhood that it's just that one toy we don't want to throw away and give up on. But the next time that they try and leave, Paddy gave them a flat tyre, so he punctured their tyre so they couldn't leave, and then they had to change the tyre, and again, when the tyre is changed, they can't leave because of the bunny again, and Agnes's bunny this time is not left behind, but it is in a gutter, and they're like, how did it get up there? And I'm like, Paddy, or Kira, one of them threw it up there and ripped it apart and destroyed it. Or, come to think of it, maybe Ant did because he didn't want them leaving, because obviously he doesn't want to stay with his captors anymore. So perhaps Ant did it, ripped up her toy and threw it up there. And here we have a great tense scene where now Ben and Louise and Agnes know they're serial killers, and I think Paddy and Kira haven't figured this out yet. They don't know yet, but that they know that we know that they know that they're serial killers. So up Ben Dalton goes up this ladder to go get the bunny toy from the gutter, and it is Paddy who is holding the ladder to steady it, and I'm like, will he tip this ladder? Will he kill Ben and start the bloodbath? Is it going to happen right now? But it doesn't. We just get some great tense, really thrilling scenes. And I think this then, after they go back in the car now they got the tyre fixed, this is the last time they try and escape. But what happens is Paddy pushes Ant, who cannot swim, as mentioned earlier, breadcrumbs, and Ant begins to drown. So they have to stop the car, and then Ben jumps into the lake to save Ant. And at this point, Mike, who is the guy that was the chef in the C restaurant, which is his house, he comes up and drives up the car, and then he shoots the windscreen. So they can't escape, and then they have to run into the house to retreat. Here also, the lake, as Paddy says, it was quite disturbingly, he's like, oh, that's okay, let Ant drown in the lake, that's where his parents are. So, that's where the bodies of his parents are, in that lake, and he just pushed Ant to go to his rotting parents' corpse. Horrible stuff. And now it is time for a bloody game of hide and seek. But here, after spending so much time on the family, because it's slow, we have enough time to build up these characters and make them so three-dimensional and believable as people who are struggling, that I begin to care for the family and Ant, and I don't want any of these people to be killed. So this is great when we go into the third act and we play this torturous game of hide and seek, because I genuinely do not want any of these family members to die. I want them all to escape. Okay, spoiler warning ahead. So who is it that dies during this little game of hide and seek around the farm? So, Mike is killed by Louise in the bathroom or the bedroom upstairs. That's due to a head injury thanks to Louise clocking him over the head and killing him. Kira, sadly, is killed by Louise again as she kind of topples her off of the roof. So she dies by falling to her death. And I say this is sad because it is implied in the film that Kira is one of the first victims of the family that Paddy killed. And speaking of Paddy, Paddy is killed by Ant. And Ant picks up a stone or a brick, I think it's one of the two, and he continuously smashes Paddy's head in until he is no more. Which I think was a great throwback, again in the writing, to a comment that Paddy made earlier, where Paddy says that we're all cavemen deep inside, and here's Ant finishing him off quite caveman-like with a rock just into his head continuously. But I will note here that the dad, Ben Dalton, found him to be totally useless, completely useless. It's Louise who defends the kids and the house and the family, whilst Ben continues to have an emotional breakdown, which he had throughout the movie and the film, but specifically here he does nothing, and he almost dies. I mean, when Louise kills Mike, it's defending the fact that Ben almost is dead. I think it's a theme throughout this film. Again, breadcrumbs, Louise is the one who's going to defend them in the end, because she's the one that constantly goes against Paddy and challenges him. Okay, some shout-out moments of the film that I found, I would say, is the reveal that Kira is possibly the first child victim of the first family Paddy killed. I did mention this, but I'll mention it in more detail now. Here's the twist within the twist. This makes Kira not a serial killer alongside Paddy, but a tragic child bride. Kira is also a domestic abuse victim throughout the film, And the movie does explore this. James Watkins does touch on it physically at one point and mentally throughout the film, but it's not an in-depth exploration. It is more subtle hints here and there that she's a female abuse victim, domestic abuse victim. But the child bride thing, really, wow. And Kira at one point, when they're all holding each other gunpoint, she's like, "Take me with you. I'm the first victim. I was the first child." And this is sort of confirmed by Paddy when later, before Paddy dies, he says, "Oh, after you, Ben and Louise, after you're both dead, Agnes will be well looked after." This is after Kira's dead, so he needs a new child bride, so he goes after Agnes. But let's talk about characters. I think Paddy, as James McAvoy, is a well-written, very damaged, and very charismatic character. He's definitely damaged by his past himself and has now become a serial killer and a kidnapper. And whilst this isn't the first damaged character that James McAvoy has played, and those of you who have watched Split will know he played Kevin, James McAvoy's portrayal of Paddy really does stand out as a different, unique, damaged version, and it doesn't feel like I'm watching Kevin from Split, it feels like I'm watching Paddy from Speak No Evil. So I thought that was really good and well done by James McAvoy and James Watkins and the creative team. However, sometimes, as I say, the film was a bit predictable. I guessed Ant wasn't their child within the first half hour of the film. Also, the dialogue during the dinner by the sea, Paddy asks Ben and Louise, "What is the sexiest organ?" And I turned to my friend in that moment, Scott, and I said, "The brain," like I whispered the brain before Paddy had a chance to go, "The brain." So I did think that was a bit predictable in the writing too, because what else is a serial killer going to say other than the brain? But overall, I think James Watkins and co have done a really good job at creating a well-realised world with fully fleshed out three-dimensional characters. And I think it's great to see two different versions of male characters having mental breakdowns on the screen. Where James McAvoy's character Paddy is having a mental breakdown through family trauma and he's turned into the serial killer, very much do we get a different, more subtle, softer side of a man's mental breakdown through Ben Dalton, who is dealing with grief of being cheated on and a potential family breakup. And I think his exploration of losing his own mind in comparison to Paddy was very well done, to see them both at different ends of grief and how they can display in people based on whatever trauma they may have been through in childhood. Or not. So I thought that was really good to see men having breakdowns, and that forced Louise, I think, to take charge in the end, and throughout, really, and throughout. Okay, that was my review. I think this was a good film. You should definitely see it, and I look forward to watching it again. All right, see you in the next review or reaction or whatever it is. Bye.